The Lean Startup by Eric Ries is a groundbreaking book that has revolutionized the way businesses approach innovation and growth. It challenges traditional business methods and introduces a new way of building startups through continuous innovation, rapid experimentation, and customer feedback. The core idea of the book revolves around the build, measure, learn loop. Instead of spending years developing a product based on assumptions, startups should create a minimum viable product, MVP. Test it with real customers. Analyze the feedback. Make necessary improvements. This process helps businesses avoid wasting time and resources on products that may not succeed in the market. The book also introduces the concept of the pivot, which means making a strategic shift when the current plan isn't working. By following this methodology, startups can be more adaptable, reduce uncertainty, increase their chances of success. At Audiobook World, we bring you the essence of powerful books like The Lean Startup so you can grasp life-changing ideas in just a few minutes. Our mission is simple: to make learning easy, engaging, and accessible to everyone. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a professional, or someone who loves personal growth, our summaries help you absorb the most valuable insights without spending hours reading. Get ready to dive into The Lean Startup and discover how small changes can lead to massive success. Chapter 1. Start. Every startup begins with an idea. But is an idea enough? Eric Ries argues that uncertainty, not execution, is the biggest challenge for startups. Traditional business methods focus on detailed planning, market research, and perfect execution. However, startups operate in a highly uncertain environment where assumptions often fail. No matter how brilliant an idea seems, there's always a risk that customers may not want it. Ries introduces the concept of validated learning. Startups should focus on learning what customers truly want, rather than blindly following a business plan. Many entrepreneurs assume they already know what their customers need, but this assumption often leads to failure. Instead of spending months or years developing a perfect product, startups should create a minimum viable product, MVP. A simple version of their idea. Something they can test with real customers as early as possible. This approach helps them gather feedback, measure actual demand, make data-driven decisions. The chapter also highlights the importance of a scientific approach to startups. Instead of treating entrepreneurship as a form of art, Ries suggests applying the build, measure, learn feedback loop. Entrepreneurs should build a basic version of their product. Measure how customers interact with it. Learn from the results. If the idea isn't working, they should pivot, making strategic changes based on feedback. A key example from this chapter is Ries's own experience at Imvo, a startup where he and his team spent months perfecting their product, only to realize that customers weren't interested in their initial vision. This failure led him to embrace the Lean Startup methodology, focusing on small, quick experiments rather than long-term assumptions. Ultimately, Chapter 1 sets the foundation for the entire book. It teaches that startups should not aim for perfection, but for continuous learning. The faster a startup can test ideas, the higher its chances of survival. Chapter 2. Define. What exactly is a startup? Most people think of a startup as just a small business. But Eric Ries defines it differently. According to him, a startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under extreme uncertainty. It's not just about size. It's about the level of uncertainty. Even large companies can have startup-like teams working on innovative projects. Many entrepreneurs assume they are building a business. But in reality, they are running an experiment. The goal is not just to create a product, but to learn how to build a sustainable business. This means answering fundamental questions. Who are our customers? What problems do they have? Will they pay for our solution? A startup must constantly test these assumptions. Ries introduces the entrepreneurial mindset, which means thinking like a scientist. Every startup has a vision. But instead of blindly following that vision, founders should break it down into testable hypotheses. For example, instead of assuming people will love my app, they should ask, if I launch this feature, will 60% of users return the next day? This shift from guessing to testing is the core of the Lean Startup methodology. The chapter also emphasizes the importance of innovation accounting. Unlike traditional businesses, startups can't measure success with revenue or profit in the early stages. Instead, They should track metrics that show real progress, like customer engagement, retention rates, and learning milestones. This data helps them decide whether to pivot or persevere. A key example in this chapter is Dropbox. Instead of spending years developing their product, the founders started with a simple explainer video. This video demonstrated how the product would work. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people signed up, proving there was demand. This experiment validated their idea before they built the full product. Chapter 2 teaches a powerful lesson. A startup is not just about building. It's about learning. The faster a startup can test its ideas, the faster it can adapt, grow, and succeed. Chapter 3. Learn. Startups don't fail because they can't build their product. They fail because they build something that nobody wants. This is the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, focusing too much on execution and not enough on validated learning. In this chapter, Eric Ries emphasizes that the primary goal of a startup is not just to make a product, but to learn what customers truly need and will pay for. Most entrepreneurs rely on assumptions. They believe they know their customers. They assume their solution is perfect. But in reality, these are just guesses. Instead of spending months, or even years, developing a full product, startups should start with a minimum viable product, MVP, a basic version of the product that can be tested with real users. This allows startups to gather feedback quickly, make improvements, and avoid wasting time on features nobody wants. Ries introduces the build, measure, learn loop. It's a continuous cycle. First, build something simple. Then, measure how users interact with it. Finally, learn from the data and make changes. This process should happen as quickly as possible. The faster a startup learns, the higher its chances of survival. A great example in this chapter is Zappos, the online shoe retailer. Before investing in warehouse, inventory, or logistics, the founder, Nick Swinmurn, simply took photos of shoes from local stores and put them online. When customers placed orders, he went to the store, bought the shoes, and shipped them. This simple experiment proved that people were willing to buy shoes online before he built a full-fledged business. Chapter 3 teaches an essential lesson. Startups should not aim for perfection. They should aim for learning. The goal is to test ideas quickly, gather real feedback, and make data-driven decisions. The faster a startup learns, the sooner it can pivot, adapt, and grow. Chapter 4. Experiment. Startups are not about following a fixed plan. They are about running experiments. In this chapter, Eric Ries explains why entrepreneurs should think like scientists, testing their ideas through controlled experiments before fully committing to them. Most startups fail because they assume they already know what customers want. But assumptions are risky. Instead of spending months or years building a product based on guesses, startups should create a minimum viable product, MVP, the simplest version of their idea that can be tested with real users. The goal of an MVP is not to be perfect. It's to learn as quickly as possible. An MVP can take many forms. It could be a simple website, a prototype, or even just a landing page explaining the product. The key is to test the most important assumptions with the least amount of effort. If customers respond positively, the startup can move forward. If not, they can pivot and try a new approach. One of the best examples of this is Groupon. Instead of building a complex deals platform from the start, the founders tested their idea with a simple WordPress blog. They manually created and emailed PDF coupons to customers. When they saw strong demand, they built the full platform. This experiment saved time, reduced risk, and proved that people wanted their service before they fully launched. Ries also highlights the importance of actionable metrics. Many startups track vanity metrics, like total downloads or website visits, that don't actually indicate success. Instead, they should focus on metrics that drive real decisions. Are customers using the product repeatedly? Are they referring others? Are they willing to pay? These insights help startups make data-driven choices. Chapter 4 teaches a crucial lesson. Startups should not assume. They should experiment. The faster a startup can test, learn, and adapt, the better its chances of success. Chapter 5. Leap. Every startup is built on assumptions. But which assumptions matter the most? In this chapter, Eric Ries explains that successful startups don't just test random ideas. They focus on leap of faith assumptions, the critical beliefs that determine whether a business idea will work or fail. There are two key assumptions that every startup must test. 1. Value hypothesis: does the product solve a real problem for customers? 2. Growth hypothesis: will the product attract more users and grow over time? Instead of spending months perfecting a product, startups should take a leap of faith and test these assumptions as early as possible. If the assumptions are wrong, no amount of effort can make the business successful. A great example is Airbnb. When the founders first had the idea of renting out air mattresses in their apartment, they didn't create a complex website or invest in expensive marketing. They simply listed their own apartment online and waited to see if people would pay. When they got their first few bookings, they proved that their value hypothesis was correct. People were willing to stay in strangers' homes instead of hotels. Ries also warns against false optimization. Many startups spend time improving small details, like tweaking the design or adding new features, before even knowing if their core idea works. Instead, they should focus on testing their most important assumptions first. If the foundation is weak, no amount of fine-tuning will save the business. Another key lesson in this chapter is that entrepreneurs must leave their comfort zone. Talking to real customers, gathering feedback, and testing bold ideas can be uncomfortable. But without these steps, a startup risks wasting time on something that nobody wants. Chapter 5 teaches a powerful mindset shift. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, entrepreneurs should take the leap. Test assumptions. Gather real feedback. Adapt quickly. The sooner a startup can validate or disprove its core idea, the sooner it can move toward real success. Chapter 6. Test. Having a great idea is not enough. Startups must test their ideas with real customers. In this chapter, Eric Ries explains the importance of systematic testing to separate good ideas from bad ones before investing too much time or money. The key to effective testing is creating a minimum viable product, MVP. An MVP is not about building a half-finished product. It's about building the simplest version of a product that can test a key assumption. If an assumption is wrong, the startup can pivot before wasting resources. A famous example of this is Dropbox. Instead of building a complex file sharing system, the founders started with a short demo video showing how the product would work. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people signed up for the waitlist, proving there was demand. This simple test helped Dropbox validate their idea before writing a single line of code. Ries also warns against vanity metrics, numbers that look impressive but don't actually indicate success. Total downloads, website traffic, or social media likes may seem encouraging, but they don't tell whether customers truly find value in the product. Instead, startups should track actionable metrics, repeat usage, customer retention, referrals, and willingness to pay. One of the most important lessons in this chapter is that startups should not be afraid of failure. Every test is an opportunity to learn. If an experiment fails, it's not a waste, it's valuable feedback. The key is to fail fast, learn fast, and improve quickly. Chapter 6 reinforces a simple but powerful idea. Startups don't succeed by guessing. They succeed by testing. The faster a startup can test its assumptions, the faster it can build something people truly want. Chapter 7. Measure. Testing is important. But without the right measurements, startups can't make smart decisions. In this chapter, Eric Ries introduces innovation accounting, a system for measuring progress in a startup. Instead of relying on vanity metrics, startups should focus on data that actually helps them grow. Many startups fall into the trap of tracking numbers that look good but don't provide real insight. More downloads, more website visitors, more social media followers. These numbers might create excitement, but they don't answer the most critical question: are customers actually using and valuing the product? To truly measure success, Ries suggests using 3 key learning metrics. 1. Conversion rate: how many visitors become paying customers? 2. Retention rate: how many customers keep coming back? 3. Referral rate: how many customers are recommending the product to others? One of the best examples of this is Imvu, a startup where Ries worked. At first, the team celebrated high numbers of new users. But when they looked deeper, they realized most users were signing up, trying the product once, and never returning. Their retention rate was low, meaning they weren't actually creating value. This forced them to pivot and focus on making the product more engaging. Another key concept in this chapter is cohort analysis. Instead of looking at total users over time, startups should track groups of users, cohorts, based on when they signed up. This helps them see if changes to the product are improving engagement. Ries also talks about the importance of split testing, A/B testing, launching two versions of a product feature to see which one performs better. By making small changes and measuring the results, startups can continuously improve their product based on real data. Chapter 7 delivers a crucial lesson. Startups shouldn't guess their way to success. They should measure what truly matters. By focusing on actionable metrics, startups can make smarter decisions, pivot when needed, and increase their chances of long-term growth. Chapter 8, Pivot or Persevere. Every startup faces a critical moment. Should we keep going, or should we change direction? In this chapter, Eric Ries introduces the concept of a pivot, a fundamental change in strategy based on real-world feedback. Many entrepreneurs fall into the trap of sunk cost thinking. They keep pushing forward, hoping things will eventually work out, instead of recognizing when a change is necessary. The key to long-term success is knowing when to pivot and when to persevere. The importance of a pivot. A pivot is not about giving up. It's about adapting. It means changing a startup's approach while keeping its bigger vision intact. Startups exist in a world of uncertainty, and the initial business model is often based on untested assumptions. If the data proves those assumptions wrong, continuing in the same direction is risky and inefficient. Instead of wasting time and resources, a smart entrepreneur adjusts the strategy and focuses on what works. A startup should consider pivoting when 1. Customer engagement is low. People sign up but don't actively use the product. 2. The product isn't solving a real problem. Customers don't find enough value. 3. Metrics aren't improving despite continuous effort, retention, conversions, and growth remain stagnant. 4. Competitors are succeeding with a different approach, indicating a shift in market demand. A great example of a successful pivot is YouTube. Originally, YouTube started as a video-based dating website where users could upload videos introducing themselves. But it quickly became clear that people were more interested in uploading and sharing all kinds of videos, not just dating-related content. Recognizing this trend, the founders pivoted and turned YouTube into the world's largest video sharing platform. Types of pivots. Ries describes several ways a startup can pivot. Zoom-in pivot, focusing on one specific feature instead of an entire product. Example, Instagram started as a location-based social network before pivoting to focus solely on photo sharing. Zoom-out pivot, expanding the product scope when the original idea is too narrow. Example, Slack started as an internal communication tool for a gaming company before pivoting into a full business messaging platform. Customer segment pivot, targeting a different audience than originally planned. Example, Facebook started as a college-only social network before expanding to the general public. Platform pivot, shifting from a product to a platform. Example, Microsoft Windows started as an operating system before becoming a broader software ecosystem. Business model pivot, changing how the company makes money. Example, Netflix pivoted from DVD rentals to a streaming subscription model. When to persevere. Not every struggling startup needs a pivot. Sometimes, perseverance is the right choice, but only if there is clear evidence of progress. If key metrics, such as customer retention, referrals, and engagement, are improving over time, even slowly, the startup might just need more iteration, not a major shift. A classic example of perseverance is Amazon. In its early days, Amazon was just an online bookstore, struggling with profitability. Instead of pivoting away from e-commerce, Jeff Bezos persevered, improved operations, and slowly expanded into other product categories. Today, Amazon is the world's largest online retailer. The pivot decision. To make the right decision, Ries suggests regular pivot or persevere meetings. Every few weeks, the startup team should step back, analyze progress, and discuss whether their current strategy is working or if a pivot is necessary. These meetings prevent false optimism and force entrepreneurs to make data-driven decisions. Key takeaway. Startups don't fail because they pivot too soon. They fail because they pivot too late. Entrepreneurs must have the courage to recognize when their current path isn't working and adjust accordingly. Adaptability is the key to survival. Whether it's a small tweak or a major shift, the ability to pivot at the right time separates successful startups from those that fade away. Chapter 9: Batch. Startups often struggle with efficiency. Many believe that working in large batches, completing big projects before testing them, will speed up progress. But in reality, large batches create delays, wasted resources, and increased risk. In this chapter, Eric Ries explains why small batches are the key to faster innovation, better learning, and more successful startups. The problem with large batches. Traditional businesses often operate in large batches. They plan everything in advance, build the entire product, and then launch it all at once. This might work for established companies, but for startups, it's dangerous. Why? Because it assumes that everything will go as planned. But startups operate in uncertainty. Many assumptions turn out to be wrong. Imagine a startup creating a new mobile app. If they spend a year designing and coding every feature before testing it with users, they might discover too late that nobody wants the product. All that time, money, and effort go to waste. This is why large batches increase the risk of failure. A real-world example is Toyota's lean manufacturing system. Instead of producing cars in large batches, Toyota builds them in small, continuous batches. This allows them to catch defects early, fix problems quickly, and avoid wasting time on faulty production. Startups should apply the same principle, building and testing in small steps. The power of small batches. The small batch approach focuses on speed and flexibility. Instead of launching a fully completed product, startups should 1. Build a small part of the product. 2. Test it with real users. 3. Learn from feedback. 4. Improve and repeat the cycle. This method reduces waste and maximizes learning. If an idea doesn't work, the startup realizes it early and pivots before investing too much. If an idea succeeds, they can scale it up confidently. A famous example of small batch success is Zappos. Instead of stocking a huge inventory of shoes before launching, Zappos started by taking pictures of shoes from local stores and listing them online. When customers placed orders, they manually bought and shipped the shoes. This simple test proved the demand without unnecessary investment. Why small batches improve efficiency? Faster feedback loops. The startup gets real-world feedback quickly and can adapt immediately. Lower risk. If something doesn't work, the loss is small, and the company can pivot without major damage. Better product quality. Continuous testing ensures that problems are fixed early, preventing expensive mistakes. Increased innovation. Rapid experimentation allows startups to discover what works best. Even in software development, small batches work better. Companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google use continuous deployment, where small updates are released frequently instead of launching massive updates all at once. This allows them to constantly improve their products based on real-time user data. Key takeaway: big ideas don't fail because they're bad. They fail because they are tested too late. Startups should avoid the temptation of large batches and instead focus on small, fast, and iterative development. The smaller the batch, the faster the learning. The faster the learning, the higher the chance of success. Chapter 9: Batch. Startups often struggle with efficiency. Many believe that working in large batches, completing big projects before testing them, will speed up progress. But in reality, large batches create delays, wasted resources, and increased risk. In this chapter, Eric Ries explains why small batches are the key to faster innovation, better learning, and more successful startups. The problem with large batches. Traditional businesses often operate in large batches. They plan everything in advance, build the entire product, and then launch it all at once. This might work for established companies, but for startups, it's dangerous. Why? Because it assumes that everything will go as planned. But startups operate in uncertainty. Many assumptions turn out to be wrong. Imagine a startup creating a new mobile app. If they spend a year designing and coding every feature before testing it with users, they might discover too late that nobody wants the product. All that time, money, and effort go to waste. This is why large batches increase the risk of failure. A real-world example is Toyota's lean manufacturing system. Instead of producing cars in large batches, Toyota builds them in small, continuous batches. This allows them to catch defects early, fix problems quickly, and avoid wasting time on faulty production. Startups should apply the same principle, building and testing in small steps. The power of small batches. The small batch approach focuses on speed and flexibility. Instead of launching a fully completed product, startups should 1. Build a small part of the product. 2. Test it with real users. 3. Learn from feedback. 4. Improve and repeat the cycle. This method reduces waste and maximizes learning. If an idea doesn't work, the startup realizes it early and pivots before investing too much. If an idea succeeds, they can scale it up confidently. A famous example of small batch success is Zappos. Instead of stocking a huge inventory of shoes before launching, Zappos started by taking pictures of shoes from local stores and listing them online. When customers placed orders, they manually bought and shipped the shoes. This simple test proved the demand without unnecessary investment. Why small batches improve efficiency? Faster feedback loops. The startup gets real-world feedback quickly and can adapt immediately. Lower risk. If something doesn't work, the loss is small, and the company can pivot without major damage. Better product quality. Continuous testing ensures that problems are fixed early, preventing expensive mistakes. Increased innovation. Rapid experimentation allows startups to discover what works best. Even in software development, small batches work better. Companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Google use continuous deployment, where small updates are released frequently instead of launching massive updates all at once. This allows them to constantly improve their products based on real-time user data. Key takeaway: big ideas don't fail because they're bad. They fail because they are tested too late. Startups should avoid the temptation of large batches and instead focus on small, fast, and iterative development. The smaller the batch, the faster the learning. The faster the learning, the higher the chance of success. Chapter 10: Grow. Every startup dreams of rapid growth. But how do successful startups achieve it? In this chapter, Eric Ries explains that true, sustainable growth doesn't come from marketing tricks or big advertising budgets. It comes from a deep understanding of how a product spreads naturally. He introduces the concept of sustainable growth, which happens when existing customers bring in new customers without constant external spending. The 3 engines of growth. Ries identifies 3 primary ways startups can achieve sustainable growth. Each startup must find the engine that works best for its product. 1. The sticky engine of growth. This model focuses on customer retention. If customers keep using a product and rarely leave, the business will grow steadily over time. Examples: Facebook, WhatsApp, and Netflix. Once users join, they stay engaged for a long time. The key metric here is churn rate, the percentage of customers who stop using the product. A low churn rate means strong growth. 2. The viral engine of growth. In this model, customers bring in new customers naturally. This often happens through word of mouth or built-in product sharing. Examples: TikTok, Instagram, and Dropbox. Users invite friends, which causes exponential growth. The key metric here is the viral coefficient, how many new users each existing user brings in. If each user attracts more than one new user, growth becomes unstoppable. 3. The paid engine of growth. Here, startups acquire customers through paid advertising, such as social media ads, search engine marketing, or influencer partnerships. This works best when the lifetime value, LTV, of a customer is higher than the cost of acquiring them, CAC. Examples: Amazon and Uber. They invest heavily in paid ads, but only because they know each new customer will generate long-term revenue. Finding the right growth engine. Each startup must identify which growth engine works best for them. Many businesses fail because they rely on the wrong strategy. For example, if a startup depends on paid marketing but has a high churn rate, it will keep losing customers and burn through money without real growth. Successful startups focus on one primary growth engine. Once that engine is optimized, they can experiment with others. For example, Facebook first focused on virality, users inviting friends, before later using paid advertising to scale even further. Why? Traditional marketing doesn't work for startups. Traditional businesses often grow through large advertising campaigns. But startups can't afford this approach because they are still figuring out their product market fit. Spending money on ads before knowing if customers truly love the product is a waste. Instead, startups should focus on customer feedback and product improvements. Encourage organic referrals through great user experiences. Test small marketing experiments before scaling up. A great example is Tesla. Instead of traditional ads, Tesla relies on word of mouth, customer loyalty, and viral excitement around its products. This has helped them achieve massive growth with very little paid marketing. Key takeaway: growth is not about spending money, it's about finding the right strategy. Startups should focus on keeping customers, encouraging referrals, or using paid ads wisely. The secret to success is choosing the engine of growth that fits their business model and optimizing it for maximum impact. Chapter 11: Adapt. Startups operate in an environment of extreme uncertainty. Plans often fail, assumptions turn out to be wrong, and unexpected challenges arise. In this chapter, Eric Ries explains that the ability to adapt is one of the most important skills for a startup's survival and success. Why adaptation is critical for startups. Many startups fail because they stick to their original plan, even when it's clear that it's not working. They assume that hard work and more time will fix the problem. But in reality, refusing to change direction leads to wasted time, wasted money, and eventual failure. Adaptation means being flexible and responsive to new information. It's about recognizing mistakes early and making necessary changes. The best startups don't follow a fixed plan, they adjust their strategy based on real-world feedback. A great example is Netflix. Originally, Netflix was a DVD rental service. But as streaming technology improved, they quickly adapted and shifted their business model to online streaming. This pivot helped them stay ahead of competitors like Blockbuster, which failed to adapt and went bankrupt. Building an adaptive startup culture. Ries explains that startups need a culture that encourages continuous learning and adaptation. This means encouraging employees to experiment and test new ideas. Being open to failure and using it as a learning opportunity. Making data-driven decisions instead of relying on assumptions. Holding regular review meetings to assess progress and make adjustments. At Toyota, they use a method called 5 Whys to find the root cause of problems. Instead of just fixing surface-level issues, they ask why 5 times to dig deeper and solve the real problem. Startups can use this technique to improve processes and eliminate hidden inefficiencies. The dangers of over-adapting. While adaptation is crucial, Ries warns that some startups make the mistake of changing too frequently. Constantly switching directions without proper analysis can lead to confusion and instability. Instead of randomly trying new things, startups should make strategic, well-researched adjustments. For example, if a startup changes its product features every week based on random customer feedback, it won't build a stable, reliable product. The key is to balance adaptation with long-term vision, making smart changes while staying committed to the startup's core mission. Key takeaway: success in a startup is not about sticking to the original plan, it's about adapting to reality. The best startups are not the fastest or the smartest, but the most adaptable. By continuously learning, improving, and making strategic adjustments, startups can stay ahead of challenges and create lasting success. Startups are not just about having a great idea. They are about testing, learning, adapting, and growing in an uncertain world. The Lean Startup by Eric Ries is not just a book, it's a new way of thinking, a mindset that helps entrepreneurs build products that truly matter without wasting time and resources. It teaches us that failure is not the enemy. The real failure is not learning from mistakes. Through small experiments, quick feedback, and smart pivots, startups can turn uncertainty into success. At Audiobook World, our mission is to bring the wisdom of the world's best books to you in a way that is engaging, insightful, and easy to absorb. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a professional, or simply a curious learner, our audiobooks will help you grow and develop new perspectives. If you found this summary valuable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Audiobook World for more powerful book insights. Let's keep learning, keep innovating, and keep moving forward, one book at a time. See you in the next audiobook.